Greetings, campers! Welcome to the world according to Yoni. Since there's nobody else hanging around here, I guess that makes me Yoni. I'm glad you're here with me today. We have a wonderful show. Part two of my conversation with character actor Stephen Tobolowsky. For those of you who haven't seen part one, you're not allowed to watch this. You have to go back, watch part one, and then you can watch this one, okay? So you got to get all parts because Stephen is a fascinating guy, tells great stories, and is just a really nice person. So there you have it. Afterwards, we'll come back and I'll go into a little bit of a political rant. But until then, when we left our intrepid heroes, Stephen was telling a story about the opening night on Broadway of his college and graduate school girlfriend's show, Crimes of the Heart. Yes, Stephen was in a relationship with Beth Henley, the playwright. And it's a great story, which is another reason why you got to go back and watch part one if you haven't watched it. And we'll pick it up from the end of that conversation with that story. So enjoy part two with Stephen Tobolowsky. No, you never, that's the thing, you never know. I look back, I had a very strong theater company in high school. And actually, I got to see some of them last night because my wife threw me a Zoom birthday party. Mm-hmm. And so I had people from throughout my entire life. So I have my high school theater friends and my college theater friends and my professional theater friends. And sometimes they mix. I mean, Michael O'Keefe was co-starring with me in a play I wrote my senior year of high school when he got a call in the middle of our rehearsal that he had gotten his first national commercial and he was going to have to miss the opening night of my play. So I was like, but he came back and his first billing as Michael O'Keefe was in my play our senior year of high school. So I will always have that.
You will always have that.
I do. And I show him every now and then. I take out because it's a little paper mimeograph program. Mm-hmm. And I say, look, first time you were ever billed this way. There's the memories, because you don't know what's going to happen to anybody. And
no,
that's one of the, I think I look at that as one of the pleasures of doing what we do. Cause you can be nobody today and not working. And then all of a sudden, boom. And I mean, in your case, from the 1980s on, I mean, have you gone through any periods where you weren't working?
Oh, sure. Well, this whole last year, I haven't worked.
Well,
the pandemic.
Yeah.
And but there were the thing is, the good news and bad news about being a character actor is that there are always more opportunities for you to work than if you're a leading man in a movie. Because being a successful leading man in a movie depends not only on being handsome and having hair and being a good actor, but also on your box office. So I remember I was doing a couple films with Chevy Chase, and I was talking to him, and he was saying, like, it's crazy because, like, the Fletch movies, he says you're holding your breath with the release of each Fletch movie, because if the box office goes down, that's it for Fletch and that's it for you. You're always on the hook, and it depends so much on because so much depends on who that leading man or leading woman is, and on what they. Whereas a leading man, we never make a ton of money. They can always bring us in. We're interchangeable at times, maybe too interchangeable.
I don't know that I'd call you all that interchangeable, because you have created for yourself, at least, for me, uh, so many memorable characters. Uh, because I study character actors. I love to watch and think, oh, I can steal that. That's good. The only thing I couldn't steal was your goddamn last laugh in Groundhog Day, because I cannot. I tried 20 times over this last week to imitate that for people, and I just can't do it.
And and like I said, I'm not really sure what happened because we were just winging it at the time. It's like when Bill punched me in Groundhog Day. Harold Ramis says, "Okay, this is how we're going to set up the shot." I said, "Well, just is there any place you want me to look after Bill punches me?" He says, "You could do that." I said, "Well, yeah. He ain't going to punch me. As soon as he hits, I'm going to turn and I'm going to stop wherever you tell me to stop, wherever you want me to look, and then I'll fall out of frame." He says, "Well, look at the courthouse." Or it was the opera. Yeah, look at the opera house in Woodstock, Illinois, where we shot. So I turned, looked at the opera house, and fell. And the take of Bill punching me in that was the first take. We ended up doing 4 takes of it, but we just used the first one because it was the best one. But it's like, what you do as a character actor, I guess you just bring all the little bits and pieces of things you learned along the way and you stitch them together, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Like I took a ton of theater combat at SMU, and Bill obviously did too, because he throws the perfect stage punch, and it all worked really well for the camera at that time. But that's just because that was just something we were able to do, and there are other things other people are able to do. And it's one of the advantages of doing character stuff.
When you do a film like Groundhog Day, because you've got a terrific cast of people, you got a lot of good character actors in that, and comics, and you got Harold Ramis, who, out of Second City to becoming one of the best directors of comedy in the business
Ever.
and
Ever.
but you don't know when you're making the thing how it's going to turn out.
No.
You never know.
You never know. And in fact, we finished Groundhog Day, and I went to see the premiere. That was the film I saw it, and Alan Parker, who had directed me in Mississippi Burning beforehand, was waiting in front of the theater. And I went and I hugged Alan. I was saying, "Oh, it's so good to see you." He says, "Oh, stop it. You better be good in this movie." I go, "Thanks." So that was the first time I saw Groundhog Day, was really the premiere in front. And I go like, well, this is a really good movie. And I get a phone call from Trevor Albert, our executive producer, about a month after Groundhog Day came out. And he says, "Stephen, I think we're in a hit." And I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, the box office has gone up every week that this," and I don't know if your audience is aware of the specifics of what happens when a film is released, that usually the film, typically box office drops 50% from week 1 to week 2.
Right.
And so they gauge how well the movie is doing by how less than 50%. If it only drops 20%, they say, "Oh, this is kind of good." But Groundhog Day, when it came out, made more money the second week than the third, more the third than the fourth, more the fourth than the other weeks. And that's almost never happens. And so Trevor was going like, this is, but what none of us knew at the time, we knew the film was, people were enjoying it and was successful. But we didn't know how many different groups would use Groundhog Day as a kind of focal point to get their message across over the decades.
Oh, yeah.
I've had people call me about 12-step programs, Zen Buddhism, the Oakland Raiders. called me and said, could you come up and because we use Groundhog Day as a training film. And I just, at our synagogue, they said the High Holy Days are coming up. And they said, we were thinking about for Shlichot, which is kind of a holiday that we do right before the High Holy Days begin. The rabbi wanted to show Groundhog Day, and he was not aware that I was in that. That I was in that movie. And
get a new rabbi. I mean, come on.
No, so the cantor had just called me and said, Stephen, could you talk to our rabbi because he wants to show Groundhog Day as the entertainment at Shlichot, which usually they do music or some kind of thing, and doing study. You study to midnight or whatever it is. And could you talk to him because he is not aware that you're in Groundhog Day. So I said, sure. So we'll see if we could bend that into some sort of High Holy Day message. I mean, you could bend Groundhog Day into any positive message you want because it is one of the films, along with Lord of the Rings, that's the ultimate hero's journey. There's no other way to look at it, even though Groundhog Day is a moral hero's journey. And Lord of the Rings is every kind of hero's
it's Tolkien.
journey.
I don't know how you describe Tolkien.
All of it. Yeah. All of it.
But, I mean, Groundhog Day has become a cult classic. Everybody loves that film. I don't know one person who doesn't like that film and who hasn't seen it more than once. We own a DVD copy, and every time it comes on television, we watch it. I mean, even though we own it, we watch it, and it's on television every 2-3 weeks. So,
yeah, I mean, it is. When you're an actor in film, you become very aware, and I've certainly heard this from many of the directors I work with. There are a million ways a movie could go wrong. A million ways, even down to having a spectacular film and then having bad credits. Having or a bad song somewhere at the end of doing something stupid makes a bad edit or something. Groundhog Day doesn't go wrong anywhere. It is, and it could have gone wrong many, many different ways. And a lot of the rightness some of it had to deal with luck, and a lot of it had to do with Harold Ramis and the decisions he made. Because he made some very key decisions in that film, one of which being that in the original script, there was a rationale. There was a reason given early in the script as to why Bill is caught in time, and that is he's rude to someone that worked at the TV station. He's rude to a woman there, and she has come from the islands. She was born on the islands, and she knew the black magic, and she puts a curse on him. And they had that scene where he's rude to her, and she puts the curse on him, and Harold Ramis decide, cut it out. We don't need a reason. And how many people would have made that choice? How many Star Trek movies do we have to endure where at some point Spock comes back from the dead and goes, I want to talk about the space-time continuum and how this is really happening. There has to be, the best you can do is in Terminator, where you have that speech about the space-time continuum during a car chase where the Terminator is trying to kill you. And Michael Biehn is in the car going like, so I've come through time, and I've come through time, and this is what's happening. The Terminator is coming through time. It's made with skin, and BO, they have and he does the entire boring exposition speech while they're in a car chase. I go, well, that's pretty good. But Groundhog Day does it one better in that there is no exposition. No exposition speech as to why this is happening or what's going on. None at all.
It just happens.
And it just happens.
Yeah, I know you have to hear this like every time you go out or in front of some people who you've never met who go, Groundhog Day.
It's the one good thing about the pandemic with the mask on.
Nobody.
It's like they don't know I'm Ned.
No, actually, with that, you look like a surgeon. You look like a Jewish surgeon.
A Jewish surgeon.
Speaking of which, since you when we were talking last week, you seemed to like this question. So, growing up Jewish around Dallas, Texas, I have family in Houston, which I look at as more civilized city. I'm not real fond of Dallas, but what was it like? I can't imagine, especially since we're talking the 1950s.
Well, you have to understand the geography of Dallas. Let me just show you real quickly a visual here. Here is Dallas, right? Here's Dallas. And here is Oak Cliff. And Oak Cliff is about 20 miles from downtown Dallas by the freeway. Oak Cliff, there were 3 Jewish families. Now in Dallas, in North Dallas, there were several Jewish families, and there were 3 synagogues in Dallas. There was Conservative, Orthodox, and Reform. 3 in North Dallas. We're here, and this is about a 30-mile journey from here to where the synagogues are. So to go to Sunday school, we would make the drive 30 miles to, we went to the Reform synagogue there. Then we would visit with my father's family who were all Orthodox, and we would visit with them. And we went to Sunday school, not Saturday school, like a lot of Jewish people do. We went to Sunday school because we were Reformed.
Yeah, ours was Sunday too.
They didn't want us to feel different from our Christian brethren who were going to Sunday school. So we went to Sunday school. The hell with the Sabbath. And we went to Sunday school in Oak Cliff, where I lived. Let me do the visual here. In Oak Cliff, there were more Nazis than Jews, and I don't use that term. I don't use that term the way people use it today, where anybody that we don't like we call a Nazi. I'm talking like the guys who took Stormtrooper magazine, the guys who had the bust of Adolf Hitler in their living room. These people lived in Oak Cliff. I remember on our basketball team, John Rutledge was our guard. Sweet little guy. I mean, he was short, but he was a good shooter. You know, if you've been watching the Olympics, he was like one of those people on the Japan basketball team, like a little short, but could shoot like the lights out of the basket. So after one of our games, John invited us to his house to have pimento cheese sandwiches and Pepsi. And so, you know, we were a terrible basketball team, and we always lost. So, but we're laughing and joking after our game Saturday morning. We walk across the schoolyard down into the neighborhoods over to John's house. We walk in, and in his living room, on a table, is a bust of Adolf Hitler, a bust of Der Fuhrer. They got 2 flags on German flags on either side of the Fuhrer's head. And then on the coffee table in front of the fireplace are Stormtrooper magazines.
Oh my God.
Stormtrooper. So they had a subscription. And so at first I'm walking in here thinking like, well, they didn't have time. They didn't have time to clean up after their Bund rally. And then I'm thinking like, well, there's something just kind of charming about this, that they felt that this was just kind of okay. You know, this was cool. And John was a friend of mine until he found out I was Jewish. And then, let's see, one time he pushed me down a flight of stairs at school. Another time when I was in class, he stabbed me with a number 2 lead pencil in my buttocks. while I was waiting in line to sharpen my. He came up behind me and stabbed me, and I mean, he stabbed me. It didn't like, boink. I mean, he stabbed me, and it was. We never could be friends after that. All he hated me because I was Jewish. What I ended up doing in Oak Cliff was they kept bringing me in to do talks about Judaism, at the various churches so people would know what Jews were. You got to know your enemy. That's so important.
Did you go in with the horns raised? So,
at the time, I did not know the whole horn thing all came from not only a mistranslation of the Hebrew, which meant aura, but it also could mean horns. And Michelangelo had someone translate it and said, "Oh, it's horns." So he had Moses with the horn, But he was a great sculptor anyway. But it was. So we were incognito. We did not act Jewish. We didn't wear yarmulkes. And my mother and father were very adamant not to talk about religion with anyone because anti-Semitism will get us in trouble and they will target us. And they would have. So, my whole life there, besides the 30 miles, I went to elementary, junior, high school, confirmation, everything. I ended up teaching at Temple Emmanuel drama when I was living with Beth at SMU. My first job there really was teaching drama at Temple Emmanuel. But, my Jewish education came much later. Really, my real Jewish education came later when I was old enough to understand.
but still growing. I mean, I have stories too, because even in New York, um, when my parents moved us to the burbs, it was just when there's in the early 60s, when there's this Jewish migration from New York City and Brooklyn, and people were going up into Westchester County and stuff. When we moved in, I think we were one of two Jewish families. And
Mm.
by the time I guess I was in high school, uh, we taken over. There were a lot of, they couldn't mess with us at that point. But early days, I met with some anti-Semitism too. I won't go into it because it's a little really nasty, but it doesn't, I don't think it matters where you were at that point in time. It existed. I mean, hell, the Bund meetings in Yorkville in New York City on the East Side, which is now a heavily Jewish uh, population. It has one of the oldest synagogues in New York. It's conservative. My cousin was bar mitzvahed there, and it's a German Jewish congregation, so they think they're the superior race of Jews. Uh, it's funny, but it's true. They really.
Oh God.
Um, I wanted, by the way, I wanted to mention because people think of Ned Ryerson, they go, "Oh, he's such a nerd," or it's that kind of character. And then you go into Californication, where you're playing this high power producer with with a fairly big schlong, as I remember that it was described. And
Yes.
yes, but totally different. And that's, to me, the beauty of what you do is you can fill that character and make him as real as you make Ned Ryerson. And it's a totally different, because here's a power broker. Here's a guy who's got a lot of money and a lot of control. And you took it. I don't know how did you end up taking that character into that short-lived series? I can't remember the name. White.
White Famous?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
That was terrific.
Whose idea was
That was
that?
Tom, Tom Caponis, who did Californication. He called me up and said, can you do Stu Beggs again in White Famous? And it was just a wonderful show. And he said, we're going to end up with all the Californication people on this show, but it didn't last long enough. But
Yeah.
which is a shame because it was a terrific show. But just, it's a thumbnail thing. I had a great acting teacher once who was talking about playing different roles. And I think I may have asked him the point you bring up about playing such disparate characters. How do you do that? And my acting teacher, Ed K. Martin, said, there's only two questions you ever have to ask. What is my greatest hope? And what is my greatest fear? You read the script, you determine what your greatest hope is, what your greatest fear, and that creates a tightrope off of which every other question will be answered. And so if you take a look at Ned Ryerson, what is greatest hope, or Stu Beggs, greatest, completely different, or Clayton Townley, head of the KKK in Mississippi Burning, different greatest hope and greatest fear. If from the script you assess what my greatest hope and greatest fear is, you'll be able to play anything from Romeo to Juliet. Anything. You just have to ask the questions.
Yeah, I've always admired the British because in England, an actor is supposed to be able to play anything, whatever you're called upon to do. Boom. It's like you were describing stage acting,
right?
Here, and even in film, television, you can play anything.
Mm-hmm.
Here, we do not do that, especially in film and television. You are typed, and to some degree, you have managed as a character actor to avoid being typecast.
Well, that's luck. That's luck because in television anybody could play anything. I usually play either teachers, lawyers, principals, doctors. Stu Beggs was a one-off, being able to play that producer, with the huge schlong. That was great. That's, I never get to do that kind of stuff. Never get to get the girl. But in television, you do all those things. There was a period of time when I was at SMU that a series of repertory companies were being established with connective tissue around the country, in which all the actors were exactly what you said, that they would give you would be in a stock company. That was what the job was going to be.
Right.
For actors mainly. And in that company, you would play any variety of roles. And so the training of the actor at SMU, for example, was to be versatile, physically versatile, with the way you approach a part, creating different kinds of roles, because they thought that's what the future was going to look like. They did not know the future was going to be streaming. And, streaming is coming back to what the theater could have been in the past, where you have all these short, 6 and 8 episode series.
Yeah.
And you have, 50 of them instead of 3 big shows on television. And so we're coming back to it with streaming, where there's a lot of opportunity for lots of different types of roles. So I think it may be coming back. It may be coming back to that.
It would be nice.
To that kind of training. Yeah, it would be. It'd be great for us, for you and me.
Exactly.
It'd be great.
Yeah. I like the idea. Listen, here's something most people who know you or know your work don't know about you, which is your musical background, that you actually were in a band that recorded 2 songs for an album. And there was this guy you played with.
Yeah, that was now people may know this because this is a story I've told, but I happened to be here and we did not discuss this beforehand. This is something you just discussed.
Yep.
Let me show you this.
There it is.
Here is the album. Here is
and vinyl, no less.
Yeah, vinyl and let's see. Yeah, this is. I don't know if you could see the visual here. So here is. Here we are. Cast of Thousands. This is us. Cast of Thousands, and let me turn on a light, see if you can see this here. And there is our guitar player, Stevie Vaughan.
Yeah.
So Stevie Ray Vaughan played on those two records, but he wasn't in our group. Stevie was just a guy from our neighborhood, and we were going to go to Tempo 2 Studios to record this, and Bobby Foreman, who was the only person in our group who had any talent. Bobby was one of these freaky guys who could play any instrument well, and he could sing. You hate those guys. Everything. He could do everything well. So he said, well, I'm getting Stevie Vaughan to play lead guitar on our album. And I go, Stevie, how old is Stevie Vaughan? And Bobby said, well, he's 14. I go, Bobby, we don't need any 14-year-old kid playing guitar on our ring. We could play our own. This is the age of the Monkees, where the Monkees were protesting, that they could play their own guitars.
Yeah.
We don't need any 14. And Bobby said, shut up. This kid is so good. He's going to make us sound like we know what we're doing. And he was.
Yeah.
And he did. He made us sound like we knew what we were doing. He was brilliant. And when I did Great Balls of Fire, I worked with Jimmy Vaughan on that. Stevie's brother, Jimmy Vaughan, who was in Fabulous Thunderbirds at the time. And there was one, Jimmy and I used to go out and drink and smoke grass, go over to Kiva recording studios and record our songs. We had kind of the key to the city because we were doing Great Balls of Fire there. All the musicians in town were our buddies, and we could do all this. And it was dawn. We were up all night, and dawn we went to a diner, and there was Stevie sitting in the diner. And so Jimmy and I walk over and sit at the table with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and apparently there'd been a rift kind of some sort between the brothers, and it was at that breakfast at sunrise that Stevie and Jimmy was saying, all I want to do is play with you. All I want to do is us playing guitars together again. That's all I want. And at that breakfast, they planned the Family Style album. At the time, I think it was a double album at the time. And they were talking about it, and from then on, I lost my drinking buddy, Jimmy Vaughan, and Jimmy and Stevie were working on songs for the album after hours, after we were shooting. And near the end of Great Balls of Fire, Stevie said he was going up to, Minnesota, to play with Eric Clapton. And he said, you want to come play with us at the show there? So Jimmy got the dream of his lifetime to play guitar with Stevie and with Eric Clapton, rock and roll. And it was at that concert that they flew in by helicopter, and Stevie jumped on the helicopter, and Jimmy jumped on the helicopter, and Connie, Jimmy's wife, she lived around the corner from me, she jumped on the helicopter, and the helicopter pilot said, ma'am, we got too much weight. You'll have to wait for the next helicopter. So she got off, and Jimmy goes, where my wife goes, I go. He jumps off the helicopter, and so it was just Stevie, and the helicopter didn't even make altitude, and it crashed. And that was it. And Jimmy finished working on that album. He said kind of as an act of mourning, as editing and producing the record. So whenever you hear that album, It's got a lot of hurt. It's got a lot of hurt and a lot of pain in it.
But
You know,
I
special.
mean, there's a moment you don't think of these things at the time. It's only in retrospect, but there's a rift between the brothers, and you're there for the healing of that rift and what it leads to, you know.
Yeah.
And
Happened to be there at the right time. It just like, and then you have the moments like with Jeff Hunter, like, who are you?
yeah,
Well, you're the
that's
guy who started
bizarre.
my career. What? I did what? There's that too, which is also kind of entertaining and fun.
It's entertaining and fun when you're doing well. You can laugh it off. It's not so entertaining and fun if you're sitting there going, I haven't worked in a year and a half. I really
Yeah.
am kind of
Yeah.
desperate.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that, your music, your acting, you've done some teaching too, as I think I read,
Teaching's easy to do when if as long as you're teaching what your field is. Like as long as I'm teaching acting or improvisation or voiceover or whatever, I could teach. But if
uh,
you have me teach like cosmetology or something, I couldn't do that.
well, yeah, not your, but I felt as a teacher, I learned more about acting from teaching than I did in any class I ever took. Uh, because I would see,
It's possible
yeah,
because you could see things in the mistakes of your students, but also in
exactly,
trying to clarify an idea for them, you end up making your idea simpler and simpler and simpler, and then you go, I got it.
exactly,
I got it.
exactly. And we should also mention, aside from acting, aside from music, you have written and directed, and I call myself an actor, writer, director. So I've done a lot of stage directing. I've done a couple shorts so far, so I understand. I have great admiration for the multi-talented who can, you know,
Well, I think,
tackle.
I could say it's all one thing in that my real talent probably is some connection to storytelling. My real talent is the ability to tell stories. Now, if I do that by teaching, if I do that by acting, directing, if I do that by playing a song, telling a story with a song, it's all really the same thing. It just has a different expression of it. And and that's probably the common point of the stories I write or the books I write. It all comes from whatever it is in me that recognizes a good story when you hear one.
That's I think that's about as simply put and eloquently put as can be. Um, you have your own podcast, which you should plug, because
Oh,
so please.
it what it is the Tobolowsky files, and you could just go right now to tobolowskyfiles.com, and we have 99 hours, 99 episodes recorded. And what I do is on the podcast, I tell true stories from my life. I write them, I record them, and then David Chen and I, we get, who is wonderful film person in Seattle. He's my producer and our host of the show. And I tell true stories, showbiz stories, non-showbiz stories. I think the origin of the Tobolowsky Files was David, who was on a film podcast show, wanted me as a character actor, like on your show here, is to do stories from the set about various things that happened. And I did that. I think the first episode was about, I think, Great Balls of Fire. Then the second episode, I think, was about Wild Hog, something like that. We did 3 episodes, and then my mother had a heart attack. And I went to Dallas, and I was with her the last 24 hours of her life. And she never regained consciousness. And I wrote a story called The Alchemist about the last 24 hours of her life when the family was there. And I called David up and I said, this fourth episode has nothing to do with movies. It's about my mom. And he says, well, let's just put it out and see. And that episode went all over the world. All over the world. And David said, from now on, the podcast is whatever you want to tell. So I have stories about falling in love with Beth when I saw her on stage. The story of marrying my wife, Ann, in a tornado. In a tornado. 3 tornadoes, actually, in Memphis. Yeah, that's a story. That's a story. Yeah, we got married at the Justice of the Peace. I was doing Great Balls of Fire. We got married by a Justice of the Peace. She was doing a show in Alaska, and it was right around Christmas, and there was no way to get married anywhere, and her parents did not want me to stay at the house with Ann unless we tied the knot, unless we were married. So we go to Memphis, December 20, go back where we're shooting Great Balls of Fire. Go back to Memphis. The only place open is a judge in the civil court, and he does the ceremony. And Ann and I go back to the Radisson Hotel, and we thought, well, what are we going to do for the honeymoon? And it's pouring rain now, pouring rain. And she said, well, the weather seems so bad. Maybe we don't do anything. Maybe we just order room service. I said, there's a pizza place. They have Domino's Pizza. Why don't I just call Domino's and get a pizza? And she goes, great. Pizza's great. Let's have jalapeno pizza. Jalapenos, that sounds great. So I called up Domino's Pizza, and they said, well, sir, we normally guarantee a 30-minute delivery, but with the 3 tornadoes in the area, we can't guarantee a 30-minute delivery. And I said, well, it's okay. I'm only 4 blocks from you. I'll just drive over there and get the pizza myself. And they go, okay. and so I go down to my rental car, which is under the hotel in the concrete bunker. And for some reason, my brain did not absorb the phrase, the 3 tornadoes in the area. So I pull out of the garage, and suddenly there's trees moving across the road, and the car is not stable on the road, and we're starting to turn like, oh my God, hail, and the winds are blowing, and branches are flying, debris is going. So I'm going like 2 miles an hour to go the 4 blocks to Domino's Pizza. I get to Domino's.
Go back into the garage when you saw it.
No, I went to get our pizza. So I go and I get there an hour later, and at this time I'm covered with rain. There was hail, there was storm debris. I come in, I go, I'm here for the jalapeno pizza, and he gives it to me, and he goes, well, sir, it's cold by now. I go, it's okay. It's okay. I'll take it back. I get back in the car. Tornadoes, and the lightning, thunder, like sounds of freight trains all around. 3 tornadoes in the Memphis area. It takes me an hour to get the 4 blocks back. I come up, open the door. Ann is in tears because she thought I had gotten cold feet from the wedding and had deserted her. And I came in with the cold, wet pizza. She runs to my arms and she says, you're back. And I said, yeah, I'm back. So now we've been married 33 years.
It was 88, right?
Yeah, something like 30, something like that, 31, 32, 33, somewhere in there. And we have jalapeno pizza every anniversary in honor of the trip with the 3 tornadoes on the day we were married.
I bet you haven't repeated that part of it, though.
No.
Hey, honey, let's go. I hear there's going to be a tornado in Arkansas. Let's go do it.
Let's go. No, let me tell you, everybody wants to be a storm chaser. Let me tell you, you do not want to be anywhere near one of those things. But
I've seen the video, and I'm going, the people who are the storm chasers, I sit there and go, are these people out of their freaking minds?
Yes. So I do those stories in the Tobolowsky files. Stories about romance, stories about having children, stories about show business, stories about crazy things in New York City. This last series, I have several podcast stories about when I directed the Miss Firecracker contest there at the Manhattan Theater Club.
Was that where you directed it?
Yeah, we directed it there, and we ended up getting a film deal for it. And Holly was, in my book, always a big star, but that certainly helped make her a big star.
Oh, she's wonderful.
She's so wonderful.
And
She's
she's gorgeous.
one of the best ever, and gorgeous, and just such a talent. But anyway, I have several stories about that which are hair raising and horrendous. But people have enjoyed it. But the stories have been on the radio and various places, but we don't charge anything for them. That's the best thing about it. It's absolutely free, and no salesman will call. So just go to Tobolowskyfiles.com, and just, if you're on a car trip or something, people love to listen because it's an hour a show, and it'll get you from New York to Boston very easy.
Well, you need to listen to 4 shows to do it, but
Yeah, you do.
depending
You
upon.
need to listen to the New York stories. There's 4 of them in a row.
Oh, there you go. Because
See,
I'm all
yeah,
about the New York stories. Obviously,
yes.
it's I've worked at Manhattan Theater Club. I did a
Oh,
staged reading of a screenplay that I wrote, and I've been working on with my wife and my friend Joe for the last 20 years.
oh
We
God, yeah.
we wrote it originally as a pilot for television series, and we wrote the first 2 episodes. And we had a company that was going to give us $1 million to shoot it. I had I had my friend Claude Kervin was going to direct it. He was from Saturday Night Live. Uh, if you remember the synchronized swimmers, uh, he directed that. So I mean, he's worked with some good people. And what I had done is I wanted wrote a part specifically for Olympia Dukakis, and I had I know if I go to her agent, I do not have enough money for her.
Hmm.
So I can't remember. I think I got to a publicist who knew her publicist, who got me her home address in New Jersey, and I sent her the script. And I'm in bed Sunday morning, and the phone rings, and I pick it up, and I'm still groggy, and the voice says, "Is Jonathan Martin there?" I'm like, "Speaking." Yeah, "This is Olympia Dukakis." And I'm about to say, "Yeah, right. Don't fuck with me." And
Oh, please
and
don't.
I realized, oh my God, it's Olympia Dukakis is calling me at home. And she had read the script. She liked it. And she said, I understand why you got it to me directly, but you have to go through my agent, but I'll speak to him. And
Wonderful.
yeah, it was perfect until the week before we were supposed to go into production, and the company that was funding us folded. And we were just
Missed it by
by
that
that
much.
much. Yeah, really. And so we let it go because it was, and go, as you always do, you go on to other projects.
Hmm.
And then my wife and I were living in Chicago, and we're walking down the street one day, and she says, you know, the real life, and it's a satire on the film industry. So she says, the real life would be a great film. And I look at her and I'm like, so you're saying we should resurrect it? She says, yeah. So she now came on as the third writer because she's a wonderful writer. And we've been working on that. And we had a deal 3-4 years ago, and it ended up going in a turnaround. So, and I can't give up on this thing. It's like,
No, nor should you. I
No.
mean, the seeds land on different kinds of earth, and you gotta give it a try. And the thing is, you have a commodity, you have a product there, and you have to keep trying. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the
Except
story.
except the funny thing is that the people, obviously the people I originally wrote it in mind with,
Hmm.
are now either not with us or too
No,
old to play
you
the
have to
part.
change.
But yes,
You
well,
have to keep reinventing.
I reinvented it so I had the lead. So that was a really good one. And then we've got the other project, is called Euphoric Tendencies. It was my wife wrote it as a screenplay,
Hmm.
um, and then we did a staged reading of it in New York. And you know how staged readings go. I mean, people, yeah, okay.
Well,
We
sometimes they lead to, yeah.
we got a standing ovation. 10 minutes, they would not leave. And I turned to my wife and I said, "How long would it take you to turn this into a stage play?" I say she did it in a week. She says it took her 2 weeks. But we did it off Broadway and it was a hit.
Oh,
And
fabulous.
we've been trying to make the movie version ever since. And that was 2008.
Hmm.
So that's our current long-term project that we want to get out next.
Hmm.
But I talk about that with you because I know you get all that. You
Yes,
you know
and you have to, it's persistence. I'm going to have to go because I have an 11 o'clock. But let me just close with this. This is per your plan. I My dearest, dearest, dearest oldest friend, who is no longer with us, wisest man I ever knew. He says, Stephen, anyone can call themselves a fisherman if they catch fish, but you must aspire to be an angler because anglers keep fishing even when the fish aren't biting. And I think all of us here in show business, in this thing where we're writing, directing, producing, whatever, we have to aspire to be anglers because anyone can be successful if they come and hand you the project. But it's say like, here's the money, here's $1 million, go make the movie. Yeah, anybody can do that. But when you come up against disappointment or get this close, missed it by that much, all this, and you keep going and you keep at it, you know, that's what makes you successful. That's what makes you an angler, and we should all aspire to be anglers.
well, that I don't think we could end on a better note than that. Stephen, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Uh,
My pleasure, Yoni. Enjoyed it very much.
and I hope we speak again soon. I think the audience is going to really enjoy this one, and maybe they'll even learn your name, not just your face.
We'll see.
Okay, so thank you, Stephen, and I
Adios.
will see you soon. Adieu.
Righto.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Well, there you have it. My conversation with Stephen Tobolowsky. You know his face, you know his voice, and now you have no excuse for not knowing his name, Stephen Tobolowsky. He's one of the best character actors this country has, so appreciate him because he does phenomenal work, and also because he's a hell of a nice guy. And I thank Stephen for doing the show. I really appreciate it. Now, uh, I'm not even sure where to begin with this. There is so much happening. You know, I do a weekly show, so how can I cover it all? I can't, especially when I have these wonderful guests and I spend time with them. So I have to pick and choose what I talk about. And today, obviously, I think what I have to talk about is Afghanistan, which, yeah, we all agree, I think, is a mess. But it's the why it's a mess that drives me insane. Because President Biden is being blamed for shit that he did not do. The terms of our leaving Afghanistan were nailed down in 2019 by he who shall not be named, just the guy with the tangerine head. When he was having his Taliban buddies to Camp David for a conversation. Uh, we are not the world's policemen, and it astounds me to see people, who I agree with on 95% of political topics. But in this one instance, even some of my fellow anti-war protest friends think we're making a mistake, or we're being, we're leaving all these women in an unfair position because God knows the Taliban isn't exactly going to be keen on their freedoms. And that may be true. We have to do what we can in that respect. However, again, we are not the world's police officers. We can't even handle the police officers in our own country, let alone policing the world. And this is what we've been talking about for years. As I recall, in 2016, one of the big things that got the MAGAs all riled up for Trump was because he said no unnecessary wars. And then, of course, like every other American president, he was involved in unnecessary wars and tried to start a few, including in this country. So no sympathy for him and no sympathy for that. We cannot do it. One of the few things that I have heard no one talking about with this pullout from Afghanistan is what Afghanistan did to the Soviet Union. People have forgotten that the Soviet Union got themselves embroiled in Afghanistan. They were there for, 20-something years, and it almost broke them. It is part of the reason the Soviet Union fell, because of Afghanistan, because getting involved in a war that could not be won, and trying for years and years and years to win an unwinnable war. Sound familiar? It should, because that's what happened to us in Vietnam. But it really helped bring the Soviet Union to an end. And for us to leave now is the right thing to do. It's an unwinnable war. Yes, we have to go in and do anything we can for human rights. And we have to get the United Nations involved. We have to speak to other countries and have them put pressure on Afghanistan and whoever is running it. Right now it's the Taliban, but one never knows. And by the way, I would like to remind some of the people in my audience, the Taliban, who used to be the Afghan freedom fighters, who were, golly gosh, supported and armed and trained by the United States. Now, a good number of those freedom fighters, including the late Osama bin Laden, became the Taliban. We trained them, we armed them, and then they turned against us as soon as the Russians were gone. So, it's an area of the world that America does not understand. America actually doesn't understand most of the rest of the world. We just pretend we do. We topple regimes that have been democratically elected because they might not like us. Oh well, if they're democratically elected, we shouldn't be involved in trying to tear that government down, should we? Do we want them doing it here? You gotta look at things from as many sides as possible before, opening your mouth and making statements of this is what we should do, that's what we should do. Because there are no guarantees in this world. We live in an insane world, and trying to figure out what we're supposed to do in any given situation takes the best minds in the country. And even then, the best minds disagree with each other 20 times over. So, in completing my thought here, can we lay off President Biden? Uh, he is doing what he thinks is right, and he is the first American president in my lifetime to end a war without starting another one. Let's say kudos for that. Again, I will say this until I am blue in the face. We are not and can no longer pretend to be the world's police. We just can't do it. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the manpower to do it. And I'm not sending my kid over to die for some bullshit cause. How about you? Is that what you want to do? I mean, I know we're in a country with this pandemic where at least, I don't know, a third, and I'm being conservative, of the people here still want to believe that this pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of American citizens is a hoax. I hope Greg Abbott appreciates that fact as he gets the best medical care possible for something he doesn't believe exists. If he was true to his word, if he meant what he said, well, Greg, you wouldn't be taking all the vaccines and the booster and the treatment that most Americans can't get. You know, the one that saved Trump's life way back when, last year. So it's a gentle rant today. I don't feel like being angry, but I would like to get the point across. Okay? So that's it. That with Stephen Tobolowsky, I think, makes a pretty damn good show. My guest next week, who you're going to want to tune in for, is my friend Christopher Corman. Chris is Harvey Korman's son. He is the author of a book, Oh My God, It's Harvey Korman's Son, which is not just about his father, but it's about Chris and his father's relationship. Chris was born with learning disabilities and some physical problems, and his father, the great Harvey Korman, who we all love and admire as one of the great comedic actors of the 20th century, being a father was more important to him than his career. Taking care of his son was more important to him. So you'll hear all about that next week when my guest is Christopher Corman. Hope you'll join me. Now remember, if you didn't watch last week's Stephen Tobolowsky episode, you have to watch that first. I'm saying that after it's done, of course, but go back and watch that one if you haven't seen it. In the meantime, I'm glad you were here. I hope you'll come back next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook. You can email me at accordingtoyoni@gmail.com. Please like our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our page on Twitter. You know, all these wonderful social media outlets. I'm tired of people messaging me and going, hey, how come you only have 150 subscribers on your YouTube channel? Because a lot of people watch and listen to the show without subscribing. I wish they would, but hey, you know, I don't control it. So anyway, that's it. And I will leave you with the same thing I have started saying every week. Please stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy, and whatever happens, don't take any shit from anyone. I'll see you next time on The World According to Me.